The billionaire founder of China's giant online retailer Alibaba has not been seen in public since October.
The disappearance of Chinese billionaire businessman Jack Ma, who hasn't been seen for weeks.
His government wants to send a message here that no matter how much money you make,
Jack Ma is one of the trailblazers of the Chinese internet and one of the richest person in the world.
I hate the word AI called artificial intelligence. I call it Alibaba intelligence.
The Alibaba Group is most famously known for its online marketplace Taobao. The annual online shopping festival on November the 11th recorded a whopping $77 billion on a single platform of Taobao alone, compared to a near $10 billion in spending on Cyber Monday for the whole of United States. Alibaba records just over $400 billion in market cap, and Jack Ma's personal wealth has reached over $47 billion. Alibaba has holdings in electronic payment, consumer financing, food delivery, entertainment, education, media, and transportation. Ant Group is Alibaba's sister company. Its primary business is fintech via the online payment system Alipay. In 2020, Alipay has over 1.3 billion in active users, processing $17 trillion in transactions. That is more than China's annual GDP. Ant's listing on the Shanghai and Hong Kong Stock Exchange, set to raise $35 billion, was going to be the biggest IPO in the history of capitalism. It is rumored to make 18 people billionaires, joining the ranks of Jack Ma himself. The likes of Jack Ma were born into an era of monumental changes in China.
China is a socialist country, but is a socialist country with Chinese characteristics.
In 1978, when Deng Xiaoping made the historic decision to open up the old planned economy to join global market, China's GDP per capita was only $156. 40 years later, the number has exceeded $10,000. In 1978, almost everyone in rural China lived in absolute poverty. That is more than 770 million people, and by the end of 2020, China has lifted all citizens from extreme poverty.
And if you don't open up the market, it would be very difficult to start the initial phase or initial process of attracting capital. That's one part. The other part is, in terms of opening up, industrialization requires technology, and technology cannot be implemented without capital and management. So the opening up of the market allows the Chinese economy to absorb capital, technology, and management skills.
Like most people in his generation, Jack Ma came from humble beginnings. He learned English by offering free tours to tourists from the US and became an English teacher. It is a widely known legend that he discovered the internet on his first visit to the US in 1995, and that prompted his determination to bring the internet to China and to bring China to the world. He started with a team of 18 people in his Hangzhou apartment.
I never thought I could be a CEO. I never thought later I'd become a good CEO.
Jack Ma did have the public behind him for a very long time. Young people nicknamed him Ma Baba or Daddy Ma. He is a charismatic businessman. He grew from poverty to global prominence. He was the symbol of China's rise. But as the Alibaba Group pushed the frontiers of business innovation, it also challenged social consensus and ventured into the gray areas of policy ambiguity. In 2015, widespread complaints from consumers prompted a thorough investigation and tighter supervisions on Taobao by the Chinese State Administration for Market Regulation. they found a considerable proportion of the goods being marketed on the e-commerce platform Taobao were counterfeits. Jack Ma's straight-talker public persona has been a huge asset as he rose to fame. That, however, changed in 2019 when he found himself on the opposite end of social consensus. One of the most notable changes in Chinese society and social media is the intolerance against the flaunting of wealth and social status. That happened over the past 5 years, with the prominence of the millennials' voice in Chinese online space, and with Xi taking office and reinstilling an emphasis on the value of equality. Jack Ma championed the 996 work culture, which is working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, which is very common in big tech companies.
996 is the spirit that I encourage in Alibaba people. If you want to have a bright future, if you don't want to be given up by the society, if you want to be successful, you have to work hard. Of course, you can enjoy life.
He said, working 12 hours a day is a huge blessing, and Alibaba doesn't need those who comfortably work 8 hours. A lot of people protested on social networks, especially the young. Tens of thousands of people joined the campaign on GitHub called 996 ICU, meaning working endlessly to earn enough money just to pay for your ICU. There is no lack of personal attack on Jack Ma, with many bluntly calling him blood-sucking capitalist. Also being the person in control of Alibaba's sister company, the fintech leader Ant Group. In November 2020, Jack Ma harshly criticized the financial regulation in China.
中国不是金融系统性风险，因为中国金融基本上没有系统。
This happened just a few weeks before Ant's initial public offering, which was set to raise $35 billion. The second largest IPO in the human history was that of Saudi Aramco's, a petroleum company from Saudi Arabia which raised around $25 billion. So on the eve of this eagerly awaited event, the Chinese government suspended the operation, and it was a huge global shock.
I think Ant Financial involves 3 issues. The first issue is, it wasn't discussed at that time. The first issue is data. Ant Financial has a tremendous amount of data on the Chinese population. That data becomes an issue of national security. Second issue, monopoly. They're so dominant that it creates a monopoly which is actually not good for further improvements in the marketplace. And the third issue is potential systemic risk to China's financial system. When it was scheduled to IPO, the amount of hot money committed to its IPO is in the trillions, not billions, trillions. So the potential risk is very, very high because it was a magnet to attract risky, speculative hot money.
Ant had only 3 billion RMB of principal that leveraged 300 billion RMB of loans. Economists have warned that this leverage is higher than that of the big Wall Street banks on the eve of the financial crisis of 2008. This poses a huge risk not only to the Chinese financial system, but also globally.
我们确实在金融市场上做了很多事儿，那最主要的是什么呢？就是发展了一大堆所谓新的金融产品，明日业金融创新，金融板块是最不可以让市场来起决定性作用的。
Ant Group is doing everything a bank does, but not being regulated like banks do. Alipay holds over 1 billion people's data, their consumption habits, one's dispensable income, and how and when they spend their money. And essentially, it was able to generate a financial credit rating system. Ant capitalized on that to open up another business, loans, and a great deal of them are consumer loans to young customers. A whole culture of predatory loaning was created with advertisements, encouraging consumerism across Alibaba and Ant Group's vast reach in media and publicity. 18-year-olds are encouraged to take out loans to travel, or a mother to get into debt just to throw her daughter a birthday party. These went against traditional Chinese values of saving money, but there it was, a whole new booming market of fintech. Today, millions of Chinese are well in debt. At the end of 2019, China's total household loan scale reached over 55 trillion RMB, that is nearly $8.5 trillion, with short-term consumer loan making up 18% of that total amount. The loan business has grown so fast that by the end of last year, most of Ant's revenue came no longer from its original business Alipay. According to Forbes, the outstanding balance of Ant-originated loans to the little people of China increased by 333% in 30 months. In a brief span, Ant has captured 15% share of China's loan market. The company is said to have over 500 million customers, almost all of them Ants themselves. In the aftermath of halting Ant's IPO, there are a handful of other Chinese internet unicorn companies that came under stricter government review or restrictions on their going public. Western media has unleashed a perspective that the Chinese government is on a mission to control the billionaires who dare challenge political authority. That is partly true. The socialist regime is making a clear stand that capitalism needs to be held accountable.
I wouldn't say restriction on the big capitalists, on the big billionaires. I would say that there are two things. One is they're developing a regulatory framework for all the big internet companies. All of these are big ones are internet companies, including e-commerce, because their accumulation of data, of big data, and artificial intelligence application must be addressed in the context of national security, state security issues. China has phenomenal growth over the last 40 years since reform and opening up. Accumulation of capital is critical for industrialization. Without accumulation of capital, you cannot industrialize. Without industrialization, you cannot develop. Without development, you cannot create the wealth that will really allow the socialist principles and the socialist ideals to be realized. I think more and more rich people in China, first of all, they're really also beginning to understand that they cannot remain in good shape unless the rest of the society also come up. And the rest of the society will come up with the help of the government. As long as the billionaires are not doing speculative, opportunistic things, it's a question of China is at a particular stage of economic development that having capital pools to allow its economic development, to allow its industrialization and modernization and socialization to proceed apace is critical. So when you create pools of capital, you create billionaires. It doesn't matter if you call it socialism or state capitalism. It doesn't matter if it's a white cat or a black cat. If your objective is to improve the lives of your people, you reach that objective, you've won. The whole ideals of socialism is exactly that. If you achieved these objectives and continue to strive toward improving even more, then you are not betraying socialism. You're actually realizing the objectives of socialism.